Okay, so I got my unit put together and got it mounted on my box here and got it running and so on, and came up with a solution for hooking the hose onto it, and I ended up deciding to put it on the back here. This thing sucks pretty good just at an idle with this even with this long hose, and I figured that I could do some different things with the hose being long like this. I could have it run up to the front, hook onto the mower deck with this long length, or I can get quite a ways away from the trailer and suck all around up in the flower beds and in nooks and crannies and so on. So I ended up going with the long hose, or leaving the hose long and having it back here, and it ends up kind of being usable that way. By the time you have it hung along the side of the trailer and so on, it's about the right length to reach the mower deck on a riding tractor. And if you need to reach like your flower beds and so on, like I said, it's already the right length and everything to reach in some places. So it seems to have kind of worked out just sticking it back here, and that thing's not behind your head being loud, and you don't have to worry about anything flying apart in there and hitting you in the back of the head or something did fail. It'd be failing back here instead of failing right behind your head. So I figured it'd just be best to have it back here. I haven't gotten my screen on yet. That's going to be my next project, and I'll pull the camera off the tripod and show you close up what all I did. So I guess I'll do that next. Okay, so here's a close-up of my setup here. You can see my top plate and my bottom plate that I had made for it, and this band that wraps around here, I bent it up in our slip roll at work, and I made this cover plate that bolts on where I was talking about, and I ended up not using that sheet metal band and bending it into a loop. I tried to bend it into a loop, and the slip roll wouldn't go that small. We got a very big slip roll at work, so it doesn't do very tight radius, and 6 inch was nowhere near the small size that it would go. It wouldn't go that small. I think something like 8 or 10 inches was about the best I could get out of it. So in any case, I bought a floor drain at the hardware store that was meant to fit on a 6 inch pipe, and I cut the center out of it so it would be smooth through the center, and this hose just happened to slide right on the outside of it, and I put some wood screws on the outside of it to hold it on, and put some studs, welded some studs into this cover piece, and put nylock bolts on to hold it on. There's 8 of them around there, and this shield thing here I made, or this snail shell blower unit I made some angle iron framework to go down, and it's held on to this plywood with 6 carriage bolts, and then the engine's bolted on top like I was describing. And I came into a dilemma when I was tightening these down, and come to find out that the carriage bolts sometimes would turn in there, and that wasn't going to do me any good when this box is enclosed in with screen and I can't reach it. So I decided that before I did anything else with it, I took the carriage bolts back out one by one, and I made a little sheet metal plate with 2 holes in it. I put the carriage bolt through the one hole and bolted it up, and then I put a wood screw in to keep the thing from turning, and then I welded the plate to the carriage bolt, so the carriage bolt has no choice but to stay put. It can't push in on me, and it can't turn on me. So it can't do anything. It's where it's at with that wood screw holding it. And I did that with all 6 of them. And I put wood bracing in here, and you can see the chute where the leaves will blow in from. And you can see the blade in there. Let's see if, yeah, you can see the blade in there. So that's pretty much it for that blade. 16 inches in diameter, and it turned out pretty well balanced for the way I made it. It runs pretty true and so on, as you can see from the previous videos and or video clips. And it runs pretty true and straight. And the motor, I think I looked at the rating. It said it was idle is 1700 RPM or something like that. And I had it just above idle, and it was running fairly smooth. But if you go above that, it starts to vibrate. So I'm gonna need to take it back off and figure out a way of balancing it. I might either come up with a way of balancing it myself, which would be will only be so good, or I might take it to Engine Machine Shop and see if they can balance it better. We'll see what my way comes out first, I guess, because if I do it, it'll be cheaper for me. So in any case, I'll move around the outside of it a little more, and then I'll start it up and show you it sucking leaves. So, yeah, as you can see, this is pretty well lit. I had to replace this thing right here and this air cleaner. Like I said earlier, my first video clip, that the cats like to pee on it, marking their territory. And they rusted this out all the way. I mean, it was going to disintegrate in my hands, and so was this piece. My throttle linkage wouldn't even work anymore. But I had another one, and I got it apart and put those pieces on, and it's a running engine. So here we'll move back and give you a clip of it running and sucking up some leaves. And then probably my next thing will be putting the screen on. But that may not happen today. It's raining. It was doing sleet earlier. It's about 40 degrees here right now. Alright, so here, give it a shot, try and start it. So it don't run half bad for a 40-year-old motor, and I think I need to deal with the carburetor a little bit. It's being finicky. It was camera shy here a little bit. Every time I turned the camera on, it would shut off, fizzle out, and quit running. So it needs a little work yet and dealing with it, but it's pretty decent running motor. Other than that, other than a little bit of carburetor issues. Like I said, it's quite a while back ago that I rebuilt this little engine, and it mainly just sat, but probably dirty inside the carburetor. So in any case, that's where I'm at, and next I'll be working on the screens, but it's raining, so probably won't get too far. Okay, so I had run this blade on my leaf blower, and it vibrated a little bit, and I knew I was going to need to do it, but this right here is a little out of balance, and I needed to come up with a way to balance it good enough to run, and I figured I would try this first before I look into having somebody, hiring somebody to balance it at a machine shop or something like that. So what I came up with was this little plug that I could run that I drilled a hole through, that I could use this piece of wire to hang it off of. This is just electric fence wire, and I drilled a hole in a little chunk of metal, the diameter just big enough that this wire would slide through, and the little chunk of metal has a shoulder on it, and it's the same diameter as this shaft, where it'll just slide in. So there it is right there, and I ran it in the lathe and drilled that little hole so it's perfectly centered up in that little chunk of metal. So basically this thing is hanging off of the center of the part, so it should hang based off of that, depending on how balanced it is. It'll hang lopsided like a lawnmower blade. I couldn't hang this off. I couldn't sit this on a blade balancer because the center of gravity is too high. If you look at it here, it would be sitting and pivoting off of somewhere around here, and the thing would just flop sideways no matter how balanced it was or out of balance. It would just tip over because it would be top heavy. So the reason I made this plug is that plug gets the balance point somewhere up in around where my thumbnail is, where it'll actually try to hang level rather than just flopping to one side. So that was my reasoning here, and it seems to work pretty good. It's hanging a little lopsided, and it just vibrates a little, so maybe they'll both kind of come together. But if I sit this level on here, you can see the bubbles all the way off to one side, so it is a little out of whack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, and whatever the high side is that I kind of come up with, I'm going to put a little bead of weld on until it kind of comes in. But it's hanging way lopsided right now. It doesn't look like it on camera or from my angle, but it is. The little level don't lie. So I'm gonna do a little playing and welding on it, and then I'll bring you back to see what I came up with. Okay, so I played around with it and welded on it some, and I got it in a little closer, and come to find that this wire here is stiff. just stiff enough that it can still have an effect on the leaning of this if you're not careful. I guess I probably would have preferred to have this thing hanging off of a string or something instead. That would be more pliable, because the wire, if you get a little bend in the wire, it does have a bit of an effect on it. But seemed to have gotten pretty close with it. I don't hardly want to touch it because it swings forever. You know, you got to wait a while for it. But I don't know if you can see the bubble. If I make it. There, you can see the bubble now. But it was centered up. And it's trying to go to center, and it did the same thing going the other way. So I'm probably about as close as I'm going to get for going in this method. So here, maybe I'll show you what I added to it for weld to get there. Now I gotta find it. I added a little bit of weld right here, and I added a little bit of weld right there, and I'm up too high. Okay, I added a little bit of weld right there, a little bit of weld right here, and a little bit right there, and that seems to have brought it in a little bit closer. So that's where I'm at now. I guess I'm gonna take it home and put it on the engine and see how it runs, if it runs any smoother or not. It wasn't completely hateful, but it'd been nice if I could get it up another 1,000 or so RPM before it start kind of vibrating. And I don't want it to wear out my journals that my crankshaft runs in, so it's best to get it balanced as best I can. So we'll see what it does.